An example being immigration, right? Everybody was told you're gonna go after like the most dangerous criminals.
Charles "Peanut" Tillman dominated the gridiron for 13 years, then swapped his jersey for Kevlar to spend 8 years as a Fed. He thrived in the bureau, but now faces a gut check moment involving ice, a shift that feels like a hard hit to the badge. Over 13 seasons, Tillman jarred the ball loose 44 times, shattering records and nearly doubling Charles Woodson's count in that same window, with 38 picks, 911 tackles, and 8 scores. He stands alone as the only legend to crack the top 10 in both forced fumbles and pick sixes. His trademark, the peanut punch, wasn't just a tackle, it was a surgical strike aimed right at the pigskin. It ignored the man to attack the ball, rewriting the rulebook on how cornerbacks played the game. That move became so iconic it's standard curriculum now, taught from Friday Night Lights all the way to the pros. Russell Okung revealed that when Seattle's Legion of Boom needed a turnover spark, Pete Carroll made the whole secondary study Tillman's film. He spent a dozen years in Chicago, cementing his legacy as the Bears' king of forced fumbles and defensive touchdowns. The Bears snatched him up in the second round, pick 35, back in the 2003 draft. Coming out of Louisiana Lafayette, he was a 4-year starter who shined despite never seeing more than 3 wins a season. He snagged 2 Pro Bowl spots and a first-team All-Pro selection in 2012 after forcing a league-leading 10 fumbles. That single-season record still stands. And in 2013, he took home the Walter Payton Man of the Year award for his class act off the field. Since Sweetness himself, only 2 other Bears have ever earned that distinction. Tillman powered the Bears to Super Bowl 41, making plays in the rain, and later reached Super Bowl 50 with Carolina. A knee injury sidelined him for that final title game. But today he's knocking on the door of the Hall of Fame class of 2026. But Tillman didn't follow the standard playbook for retired stars. No commentary gigs or car lots for him. The son of Donald Tillman Jr. chose a different path. With a father who gave 20 years to the Army, Charles bounced between bases, learning that service wasn't just a slogan, it was oxygen. That life built grit, but it also exposed him to the harsh reality of racial profiling. Growing up black near military outposts, he faced targeting early on, even being forced to his knees as a child. Those scars surfaced later when he critiqued immigration tactics that felt too much like the harassment he knew. At Hull, while perfecting his punch on the field, he was studying criminal justice in the classroom. He always swore that if the NFL didn't pan out, he'd wear a uniform just like his dad. As he told The Pivot, his heart was set on serving the country, whether in camo or another capacity. Leaving the NFL at 36, he rushed to apply to the FBI, barely beating the age limit for rookies. ESPN noted his fascination wasn't new. He'd spent NFL off-seasons riding along with cops. He survived the brutal 20-week gauntlet at the Quantico Academy in Virginia. By 2018, he was back in Chicago, this time carrying a badge. On The Pivot, he confessed to feeling small next to Ivy Leaguers and scientists, viewing himself as just a baller. But he leaned on advice from Obama, never doubt your right to be at the table, and stayed the course. His beat was the Safe Streets Task Force, hunting down traffickers, mobsters, and killers. Eventually, he became a tactical instructor, teaching close-quarters combat while packing an AR-15 and a 9mm. He spoke candidly about the silent battles the Bureau fights that the public ignores.
What are some of the things that happen in the daily life of an FBI agent or the agency that saves lives that the citizens of this country don't know, can't recognize, or be appreciative of?
Terrorist attacks.
It involved the Bureau infiltrating a domestic terror cell, aiming to snatch a sitting governor.
I'll give you one that was actually in the news. There was I believe it was the governor of Michigan. A few years ago, there was a plot to kidnap her. And through investigative means, the FBI were able to infiltrate this particular group. And with that, I believe there was an informant, and he told his handler, they get the information, they make sure it's credible. Yeah, this is legit. We got to go and protect or arrest these people before they kidnap this governor.
He applied the motto, fidelity, bravery, integrity with the same intensity he brought to Sundays, but he also highlighted quiet humanity, like letting a suspect say goodbye to family or grabbing a burger on the way to jail. When the Highland Park parade shooting struck in 2022, he geared up and rushed in to help identify the shooter on a heartbreaking day. He played a key role in pulling a victim out of the nightmare of sex trafficking. One time, he kicked in the door at rapper Lil Reese's place, and when Reese clocked who he was in the middle of the chaos, Tillman kept it strictly business. He used to crack jokes that when suspects recognized the former All-Pro during a raid, he'd tell them they had way bigger issues to stress over than meeting a football star. That was the Bureau Tillman, signed up for the one where cases were built on months of grinding intel work, and where agents treated people with basic human decency. Even while serving warrants, it was a place where fidelity, bravery, integrity wasn't just a slogan painted on the hallway wall, but a code of honor that every agent lived by. That was the version of the shield he believed in, defending it with the same fierce intensity he used to bring to every single snap at Soldier Field. Then January 2025 rolled around, bringing new orders from D.C. that forced Tillman to choose between the career he'd built for 8 years and the morals he'd carried his whole life. His gut screamed that it was wrong. On January 20th, 2025, Donald Trump took the oath of office for his second round. The deportation machine started grinding its gears almost the second the inauguration was over. Within days, ICE rolled out heavy operations in sanctuary cities, with Chicago painted right in the crosshairs as a primary target. Word on the street was that 100 to 200 ICE officers were flooding into Chicago for a week-long blitz, starting as early as January 21st. White House border czar Tom Homan, a 64-year-old veteran who started as a cop and border agent, was back in the saddle after running ICE during the first term. Now he was the boss of the whole enforcement showland. An heir pulling down a salary of $195,200 a year. He'd already stormed through Chicago in December 2024, leaning on local officials and publicly threatening to drop the hammer on sanctuary zones. By the end of January, they expected the whole alphabet soup of federal agencies, FBI, DEA, Border Patrol, and Marshals to join the party. These were supposed to be surgical strikes. But then Homan showed up to a Chicago raid with TV personality Dr. Phil McGraw in tow. That stunt turned what the White House called law enforcement into something that looked a lot more like a reality TV circus to the people on the ground. For Tillman, that was the breaking point. In a January 29, 2026 feature by Dan Pompei in The Athletic, he broke down the moment the Chicago field office got the news. They were given the heads up that Homan and Dr. Phil would be rolling into town alongside ICE to capture the immigration raids. The orders were crystal clear. All agencies were to fall in line and support the crackdown, with everyone on the perimeter making arrests and standing guard. But the reality on the streets was a mile away from the sales pitch. They were told the operation targeted the worst of the worst gangbangers, violent felons, and national security threats. In reality, agents were ordered to round up people way outside that description, including construction crews at job sites, just to hit arrest quotas. In Tillman's book, real FBI work meant deep dives and careful surveillance, not blindly sweeping a neighborhood in minutes. He went on the Pivot podcast and didn't mince words, telling them straight up, personally, that didn't sit right with me. It violated his conscience. Tillman didn't hesitate to admit that he believes the United States has real immigration hurdles to clear. That wasn't his beef. The problem was the massive canyon between the promise and the practice, a gap that independent reporters would later prove was huge. Politico dropped a bombshell in August 2025, revealing that the DOJ tried to hush up a claim from Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller that they aimed to bag 3,000 people a day. Whether that daily quota was official ink or not, the pressure to produce numbers rolled downhill fast. A January 2026 report from the Deportation Data Project showed a 7-fold spike in arrests of people with clean records during the first 9 months of the new term. Meanwhile, over 20% of the Bureau's manpower was reportedly pulled off their actual cases to chase migrants, leaving Tillman's old squad feeling the burn. These were agents who signed up to hunt terrorists, bust organized crime rings, and stop cyber attacks. Now they were being repurposed as muscle for immigration sweeps. Tillman emphasized that these commands weren't coming from Chicago bosses, but straight from Washington. He drew a line in the sand. Instead of suiting up for one specific raid, Tillman went to the gym to watch his 13-year-old daughter, Tessa, play basketball. He listened to that quiet voice inside, not the one about duty or career, but the one asking how his kids would remember him, not as a star cornerback or a special agent, but as a father who chose the bleachers over the raid van because his soul demanded it. He handed in his badge soon after. He was 44 years old and 8 years deep in the bureau. And unlike most of his buddies who felt the same sickness in their stomachs, he had that NFL nest egg. So he could afford to walk away without wrecking his family's future. He owned that privilege, noting that most agents were trapped not because they agreed with the orders, but because they had no other choice. That confession that the rank and file hated it exposed a reality much bigger than just one man quitting. It painted a picture of a bureau at war with itself, staffed by good agents who swore to uphold the law but were forced to push a political agenda that turned their stomachs. Tillman also took shots at the leadership, specifically FBI Director Kash Patel, the Trump appointee who became the first civilian with zero field experience to run the agency. Tillman laid it out cold. There are a lot of people in the FBI that aren't happy with how the organization is being run by Kash Patel, but they can't quit like I did. Patel's leadership style got roasted in a congressional hearing aired by TYT Sports, where a congresswoman dismantled his resume in real time. She turned up the heat, grilling him on why the Bureau was handling the Epstein files with kid gloves. That line of questioning highlighted the exact mess Tillman escaped. The host drew a straight line from Patel's dodging to Tillman's exit, arguing you can't understand one without the other. What Tillman walked away from in early 2025 was just the opening act. By September, Chicago had transformed into ground zero for the most intense federal crackdown in the city's modern era. On September 8, 2025, the Department of Homeland Security pulled the curtain back on Operation Midway Blitz. This massive ICE surge was named in memory of Katie Abraham, a young woman whose life was tragically cut short in Urbana by an intoxicated driver without legal status. The feds sold the mission as a precision strike against the absolute bottom of the barrel. They claimed to be hunting Tren de Aragua cartel soldiers and violent felons, kidnappers, abusers, killers, while pointing the finger squarely at Governor Pritzker's sanctuary laws for rolling out the red welcome mat to criminals. But the boots were on the ground 48 hours before the press release, with tactical teams swarming Chicago's streets as early as September 6th. The sheer magnitude of the mobilization was mind-bending. By October 2025, the arrest log in Illinois broke 4 digits, with officials later boasting a tally north of 3,300 by the time winter set in. Yet, when independent watchdogs crunched the numbers, the narrative fell apart completely. The Marshall Project dug into 1,600 autumn arrests and discovered a shocking truth. 78% were low-level risks, and in some groups, 97% had spotless records. One sweep of 600 people netted only 16 with a history. Those captured were scattered to the wind, shipped off to private prisons and county lockups across 13 states, places often flagged for nightmarish living conditions. Secretary Kristi Noem dropped into Chicago that October, taking a victory lap to tout the mission's success. Even with a government shutdown looming, the vibe on the street wasn't standard police work. It was something else entirely. It was an occupation. We're talking low-altitude choppers, agents rappelling down walls, drone surveillance, and flashbangs hitting spots right next to daycares, sending waves of sheer terror through neighborhoods. The flashpoint came at midnight on September 30th, 2025. When 300 agents besieged a South Shore apartment complex on the 7500 block with the landlord's blessing, intelligence supposedly placed a Tren de Aragua cell right inside those walls. But the paperwork told a different story, citing visa issues rather than gang affiliations. They hauled in 37 people, mostly Venezuelan nationals, and that was it. Eyewitnesses recounted scenes of parents and kids being zip-tied together, yet the raid produced almost zero significant criminal indictments. The fallout wasn't just administrative, it was lethal. with a traffic stop on September 12th tied to the Blitz, ending in a fatal shooting. In another ugly turn, federal agents put 5 bullets into a female U.S. citizen, only to quietly drop the charges against her later. Even bystanders and city staffers got swept up, leading the ACLU to slam them with a lawsuit representing 22 people, including an American citizen, claiming the feds trampled the Constitution and ignored a 2022 court order, and the raw video surfacing from these streets confirmed exactly the kind of bad energy Tillman had warned about. Clips from TYT Sports captured ICE officers treating civilians with a casual, chilling aggression that spoke volumes. The city's reaction to Operation Midway Blitz was nothing short of an earthquake. Protesters flooded the loop, screaming ICE out of chi, while demonstrators at the Broadview Processing Center got blasted with tear gas and smoke grenades. The community defense response was lightning fast. Locals built early warning systems with whistles, organized magic school bus rides to get kids out of danger, and launched bike squads to shadow federal movements. In immigrant hubs like Little Village, the economy flatlined, shops locked their doors, and churches emptied out as panic took hold. Governor Pritzker, Mayor Johnson, and Attorney General Raoul didn't sit back. They dragged the Trump administration to court for stepping on state sovereignty and using brute force. Chicago drew a line in the sand, declaring city property a no-go zone for ICE. By February 2026, the youth had seen enough. With hundreds of students walking out of class in protest, Homan eventually announced they were pulling 700 agents back to Minnesota that same month, leaving about 2,000 behind. But the scars on Chicago weren't healing anytime soon. The financial toll was catastrophic, with workers too petrified to leave their homes. In Pilsen and Little Village, cash registers went silent, while food pantries and legal clinics were overwhelmed by families torn apart by the crackdown. TYT Sports framed Tillman's departure as a symptom of a larger rot, a systematic weaponization of the agencies. The goal wasn't just law and order. It was a purge to clear the deck for agents who would follow orders blindly. Disturbing reports surfaced of agents sporting Nazi ink and hiding their faces behind masks. Whispers that some of these officers were pardoned January 6th. Rioters acting as the president's personal enforcers only made the public more paranoid. The commentary highlighted the impossible choice facing guys like Tillman's old squad. You either stay and fight a losing battle from the inside, or you walk away and let the fanatics take the wheel. Tillman made his choice, and as of early 2026, the 44-year-old is done with the badge. He's focused on being a dad to Tiana, Taylor, Tyson, and Tessa, and pouring his energy into the Cornerstone Foundation, a charity for sick kids born from his own daughter's heart transplant journey back in 2008. He's back on the mic, co-hosting the NFL Players Second Acts podcast with Roman Harper. You can catch him on iHeart and the Marquee Sports Network doing his thing for the Bears Den. He's even eyeing a PhD in history and crushing High Rocks fitness challenges. He walked away from the bureau with his head held high. No bitterness. Just moving on to the next chapter. Walking away wasn't a surrender. It was the only move for a patriot who revered the bureau's creed way more than the suits in charge. Real loyalty is to the citizens, not the bureaucracy. Bravery isn't about kicking in doors. It's about turning your back on corruption. Integrity dies the second a badge holder stops trusting the weight of the shield. He spent 13 seasons knocking pigskins loose on the gridiron. He knocked off from the service in his 8th. The technique was identical both times. Surgical, calculated, and impossible to miss. Thanks for watching. Tap the other cards on the